We dive into part two of our Ravens 2021 season review series next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we returned here with another episode of Locked On Ravens. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. We're back here. It's Tuesday, and we have part two of our 2021 Ravens season review series. We talked about weeks 1 through 6 last Monday. Now, this would have been on Monday, but the Ravens deciding to drop some bombshell news on us as they parted ways with Don Martin. We talked about that yesterday, so if you haven't checked out that episode, I do highly recommend. But here today, we're going to be talking about weeks 7 through 12. Last week, we did weeks 1 through 6. Today, it'll be 7 through 12. Next Monday, it will be 13 through 18. And then after that, we're getting into full draft season. We're doing mock draft Mondays every Monday leading up to the draft. Unless, again, there's some crazy news that gets dropped. But I'm excited for mock draft season. I'm also excited to continue looking at this Ravens season, although we had a pretty good episode last Monday because we were talking about lots of wins and good wins, blowout wins, but we're going to talk about a few bad losses today and just what went wrong with this team. We'll look at the stats, look at the whys, kind of go back and revisit it. I wanted to kind of do this before the offseason gets into full swing, and then as we get further along and the Ravens schedule is released, we'll do, again, weeks 1 through 6, 7 through 12, 13 through 18, a couple months down the road. So before we do that, though, I want to thank everybody who has subscribed to our YouTube channel. If you are here in video form, so you see my face in my background, the beachy vibes in the background, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video, it does help out a ton. Our first goal is 1,000 subscribers. I want to, again, just really thank everybody who has helped out this video journey. We did audio for a very long time before switching over to video, but that doesn't mean we're not doing audio anymore. If you're here with us in audio form, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, I cannot forget about you either. Thank you for tuning in, for listening, making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. Be sure to also follow me on Twitter at KOstreicher34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. So with all that being said, we're going to dive into the season review, weeks 7 through 12 for the Ravens. Quickly, though, I guess there was a little bit of, do I call it bombshell news? I don't know. But Antonio Brown on the I Am Athlete podcast did say that he wants to play with Lamar Jackson. Now, we'll talk about this throughout the rest of the week. But, my initial reactions are this is the 80 millionth time that I've talked about Antonio Brown to the Ravens on this show. It's something where, look, Antonio Brown's a phenomenal player on the field, but also, the off-field issues speak for themselves. Quite literally, a couple weeks ago, had another one, and I don't see the Ravens touching that. I know Lamar Jackson is given some endorsements of playing with him, but again, I just don't see the organization making that move. Maybe they do, but again, I, at this point, don't see it at the moment, and frankly, I might never because of just the way the organization has been over the past couple of seasons with their, very good culture that they have established. But again, let's get into week 7 and 8 here. We'll do 7 and 8 in the first segment, 9 and 10 in the second, 11 and 12 in the final segment. Let's talk about, sadly, the Cincinnati game in week 7. Now, a lot of people came into this game expecting a big blowout win. Lamar Jackson in his career against Cincinnati, absolutely dominant. You could go back to the game at M&T Bank Stadium and what really was his coming out party. Well, actually, I don't want to say that because he had a lot of those coming out party moments, but you go to the one in Cincinnati where he had the spin move juke and, Mark Ingram's telling him to the end zone, the he is Houdini moment. He's torching the Bengals. The Ravens are blowing out the Bengals. There was more of the same expected here, and the Bengals just took it. They took it to the Ravens. Final score, 41-17. Now, this was actually a decently close game in the half. It was 13-10. That's pretty good. But then Cincinnati comes out in the second half after the Ravens scored a touchdown to open that second half, that Marquise Brown 39-yard pass from Lamar Jackson, and they just really, they pour it on. It wasn't like the Ravens score that third quarter touchdown. Cincinnati scores 4 touchdowns after that. The Ravens score no points. Lamar Jackson for the Ravens, 15-31, 257 yards, 1 touchdown. Also led this team in rushing yards, 12 carries for 88 yards. Marquise Brown, 5 for 80 and a score. But for the Bengals, I mean, the Joe Burrow show. 23-38, 416 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Joe Mixon, 12 carries for 59 yards and a score. Jamar Chase lit the Ravens on fire. 8 receptions, 201 yards and a score. Jamar Chase seeming like the right pick over there for Cincinnati. I know the whole Sewell versus Chase debate was a real one, but yeah, looking like Chase was the right selection. Now, my theory for this game, and I've talked about this before, credit to Cincinnati for what they did. You know, they took it to Baltimore and they deserved that victory. But my theory here is we talked about week 6 last Monday and Justin Herbert. That was Justin Herbert's first time seeing this Ravens defense. Historically, or at least over the past couple of seasons, if you want to just do it recently, the Ravens, when facing rookies, second-year guys, third-year guys for the first time, usually have a field day. Usually the Ravens defense shuts them down, and the guy who hasn't seen the Ravens defense before, who was a young quarterback, can't do anything. And we saw that with Joe Burrow's first game against the Ravens back in 2020. The Ravens annihilated the Bengals. They annihilated Joe Burrow. It was Joe Burrow's worst game as a pro at that point. And then you see what Justin Herbert did. And Justin Herbert, we talked about this, coming into the game in week 6, was an MVP candidate. The Ravens shut him down. We never really heard about his MVP candidacy again after that. The Chargers ultimately struggled, and that's a whole different story. But Joe Burrow coming back to Baltimore the second time here, facing this Ravens defense. Joe Burrow has been, and this is even after this game, he has been good against defenses he has played a second time. And that is no different than what happened against the Ravens this time. The Ravens, it was really, we talked about tackling, right? Tackling was a huge, huge, huge issue in this game. You know, something where the Ravens just could not get the ball carriers down. Jamar Chase, for example, 201 yards. Well, he might have had about 70 yards less if the Ravens bring him down on just a short slant where it's a 6-yard gain. Instead, the Ravens can't tackle him. He's spinning out of tackles and goes 70-some yards, 80 yards for a touchdown. You just can't have that. You know, it's those types of plays that are just back-breaking momentum plays. The Ravens understand that, and I think over the second half of the year, their tackling got better. Their big play ability, or I guess giving up the big plays, they didn't give up as many. There were still inklings of it here or there. It didn't get completely better. But this game really was a game where them heading into their bye week in week 8 was just horrendous. I mean, it was the worst possible taste they could leave in their mouth heading into a bye week that should have been about, hey, look, we just beat a division rival. We're entering a really, really good stretch here. But at the end of the day, Baltimore goes 5-16 on third down. So not amazing, not totally terrible either. 400 total yards of offense, but they give up 520 to the Bengals. The Ravens also had 5 penalties for 46 yards. The Bengals had like no penalties this entire game. 1 for 5. I think it was like a false starter in illegal formation in the fourth quarter. The Ravens held the ball for longer, but it just wasn't it. And the Ravens actually got to Joe Burrow 5 times, and it didn't even matter because they were just torching the Ravens here and there, and it didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So talking about week 8 here, obviously there was no game. They entered their bye week. And again, as I kind of talked about, it was the worst possible taste they could have left in their mouth, because you would have been on a 6-game win streak. If you were the Ravens, you would be sitting at 7-1. That's pretty good through 8 weeks. And I think that 6-1. And for what the Ravens had gotten going, all that momentum seemed to just get completely blown out of them, and there wasn't anything. And it was all of a sudden the questions about, is this team for real? Are they still good regardless of the injuries? It became, you know, first of all, the Bengals got all the national media attention, and like, sure, they did, you know, they blew out the Ravens, they deserved it, but it became, is Lamar Jackson the guy? And all the conversation we've heard about over Lamar Jackson's tenure is the quarterback of this team. It became Lamar Jackson slander. The Ravens entering their bye week. We had to talk about it here on this show for 2 weeks straight, and that was not fun to do. So I think exiting the bye week, the Ravens knew they had to respond, and if they didn't, it might have been a very poor end to their year. Now it was a poor end anyway, but hey, we didn't know that at the time. And they came out against Minnesota in week 9. We'll talk about that game and week 10 against those Miami Dolphins in our second segment. So we'll head into our first break, but stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. It's a new year and it's a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive our 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. We return our second segment of this Tuesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. We just talked about the Ravens week 7 and 8 games. Well, I guess week 7 game and week 8 bye. But now the Ravens are heading out of that bye. We're here week 9. We'll talk about weeks 9 and 10. The Ravens facing a Minnesota Vikings team that has big threats all over their offense. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook. And trust me, the Ravens saw it in the very first minutes of this game where Justin Jefferson, 832, 50-yard touchdown pass from Kirk Cousins, another miscommunication. I mean, just brutal, all things considered. And every week, if you go back, every week we talked about, is this the week the Ravens stop giving up big plays? Or how many big plays are the Ravens going to give up this week? Can they tackle this week? And the answer for like 7 straight weeks was no, and they're going to give up a ton of big plays. We don't care what you want. So this was another one of those plays where early on, you're like, oh man, here we go again. Why? And it was tough. You know, that put the Vikings up 7-3. The Vikings ended up going into the half up 17-10 because the Ravens ended up actually getting a nice touchdown drive in the final 2 minutes after Greg Joseph field goal. Devonta Freeman got a 5-yard pass from Lamar Jackson. But then you have the start of the third quarter, and it's like, oh, what can go worse in terms of big plays than a kickoff return touchdown, the opening kickoff of the third quarter? You had a 98-yard kickoff return by the Vikings, and it was just like, no way the Ravens are going to lose this game, and they're going to come out of their bye week the same way they entered it, with a horrendous loss. But what we saw this year was improvement coming from behind. And Lamar Jackson could always do it. He did it before this season. The whole narrative, the media narrative behind him was, oh, well, you can't do it. And if the Ravens get down, they can't come from behind. And Lamar Jackson can't throw, all the ridiculous narratives that we have come, unfortunately, so familiar with that are just completely false. The Ravens, they start to get their thing going. They get a touchdown to Patrick Carr with 8:39 left in the third quarter. Devin Duvernay catches a pass from Lamar Jackson with 9:19 to go in the fourth. Le'Veon Bell citing a 1-yard run with 3:29 in the fourth. And that actually puts the Ravens up. It puts the Ravens up 31-24 with 3:29 to go in the fourth quarter. But what have we talked about? What have we talked about throughout the last couple months here? What have we talked about finishing in the Ravens defense? They did not go hand in hand in 2021, and it started here. Well, I'm not going to say that because there were other instances earlier in the season, but this was another instance of the Ravens not being able to put the game away and finish it. With 103, Adam Thielen catches a 1-yard pass from Kirk Cousins. The Vikings, 10 plays, 75 yards in 2 minutes and 26 seconds. I mean, that stuff is just unacceptable, and honestly, maybe part of the reason that Don Martindale is no longer a Raven today and is no longer coaching the Ravens defense today. So the Ravens have to rely on the heroics of Justin Tucker with 16 seconds in overtime. This was heading to a tie. This was really heading to a tie. And Justin Tucker, the heroics, greatest kicker in football, hits a 36-yarder. The Ravens win the game. And that's that. Not a pretty game by any means. A come-from-behind win because it was. Dalvin Cook ends up rushing 17 times for 110 yards. Kirk Cousins, 17-28, 187 and 2 scores. Justin Jefferson, after that touchdown, it was not effective. 3 for 69 in a score. Lamar Jackson went 27-41, 266, 3 touchdowns, and had 2 interceptions. It was a turnover game for him. He also had 21 carries for 120 yards, and Marquise Brown had 9 receptions for 116 yards. So overall, I mean, look, it wasn't a pretty win, as I said, but the Ravens got the job done. The Ravens actually end up getting 500 total yards of offense on 12 drives. They averaged 5.6 yards per play, which is actually 0.5 less than the Vikings, who averaged 6.1. The Ravens went 6 of 15 on third down. The Vikings, 5 of 14. The Ravens held the ball, get this, 46 minutes and 4 seconds. 46 minutes and 4 seconds. Minnesota held it for 23-40, and the Ravens get the job done. A lot of penalties in this one, 8 for both sides. In the red zone, the Ravens went 4 for 6. I would have taken that later in the year. And for the Vikings, they went 2 of 3. So at this point, some confidence is starting to come back, although there was a lot to work out. I think my feeling after this game was happy they got the win, but there's a lot wrong, right? There's a lot wrong, and there's a lot that needs to be fixed. But don't worry, because the Ravens are traveling to Miami on Thursday night to play a struggling Dolphins team that has not been able to do close to anything all season. And what happens? What happens? I said there was stuff wrong. Oh, after the Dolphins game, there was more stuff wrong as they fall to Miami 22-10. Now, this is a prime example of what I was talking about what the Ravens defense did in the second half of the season. Starting here, this was where I thought the Ravens defense started to play a lot better, at least in the first 3 quarters of games, because this is the game where the Ravens offense just fell off of a cliff. And it really never recovered. It really never did. The Ravens only put up 10 points against, honestly, the Dolphins have talent on defense. But the Dolphins coming into this game were 2-7. They were 2-7. And the Ravens just, they squander a prime opportunity to have their "we're here again" game, where it's like they blow out the Dolphins by 30 points and they gain that confidence. Instead, it was a struggle all around. Lamar Jackson, 26 of 43, 238 through the air, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Lamar Jackson, 9 for 39 on the ground. Rashad Bateman actually led the team with 6 receptions for 80 yards. Tua Tagovailoa only threw the ball 13 times. He went 8 of 13 for 158 yards. Myles Gaskin had 14 carries for 31 yards. Albert Wilson, 4 for 87. Now, here was the theme with the Ravens for most of the season. The running backs just couldn't get anything on the ground. I'm not going to say anything, but they struggled. And I know that the stats, the box score stats, the total rushing yards, the net yards per attempt, and all that different stuff, it'll tell you, hey, it's a top 5 unit. For people who watch the team, they know it was not a top 5 unit. So what the Ravens were going with was Lamar Jackson was leading this team in rushing almost every week, and they weren't getting a ton out of their running backs, unfortunately. The Ravens end up opening this game with a field goal by Justin Tucker. The Dolphins tack on 2 field goals. The Ravens are down 6-3 at the half. The Dolphins get a field goal with 12:34 left, but the Dolphins don't actually score an offensive touchdown until 2:19 to go in the game, because the other touchdown they scored was on a Xavier Howard fumble return. Sammy Watkins fumbled the football. Xavier Howard picked it up. And actually, I'm going to say Ravens legend Xavier Howard, because he was apparently almost a Raven, but alas, we do not know how that story would have played out if that were the case. But that's why I say, look, the Ravens defense played well, and I think they played pretty good football for the second half of the season starting this week. But the finishing was not there. It wasn't there, because what you can say about this defense is that the offense let them down, and they did. The offense did let them down. You can talk about this game where the Ravens were horrendous on third down. They were 2 of 14 on third down. That is literally unacceptable. They didn't even have a ton of opportunities in the red zone. They went 1 for 2. The Dolphins went 1 of 4, so good on the defense. But the Ravens defense held the offense at 3 of 13 on third down, 350 total yards. Only 5.6 yards per play, which isn't great, but it's kind of average in my opinion. The Dolphins had 11 penalties. The Dolphins had 11 penalties, and the Ravens couldn't win the game. It's things like that where you just have to take advantage, and the Ravens couldn't do it. And this, to me, was the most disappointing loss of the season. Disappointing compared to heartbreaking is, I think, a little different. You can talk about some games later in the year that were heartbreaking losses. This was the most disappointing one. Was a game they should have won. They played down to their competition. Miami's a talented football team, but at that point, I thought the Ravens were better. They still had a lot of their playmakers that were healthy at the start of the season. Now, that does not include Dobbins and Edwards and Peters. And they had lost guys. They had lost to Sean Elliott the week before, and, they weren't completely healthy. Ronnie Stanley had been out since week 1. But I thought the Ravens were the better football team, and they just squandered an opportunity to get a win on the board. And that's what I was saying. I was saying the Ravens, they had to win early in order to be able to lose some games late. Now, I did not have a 6-game winning streak or a 6-game losing streak on my bingo card, but still, I thought, look, if the Ravens can go 8-3, 9-2, they went 8-3. We'll talk about that. But if they could get that record, they only have to win 1 or 2 games to get into the playoffs. And they just squandered it. It was squandered opportunities here, squandered opportunities there. This Miami game is no exception. And it's rather unfortunate because, you look at this game as a what if, and what if this team could have put together an offensive touchdown drive before late in the fourth quarter. What if the defense could have held and given the offense one more chance? But this is what happened. And the Ravens end up losing a game that they honestly just should have won in the long haul. We'll head into our final break, though. Let me get back. We'll be talking about weeks 11 and 12. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. Hey, Ravens fans, this is Kevin Oestreicher with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about and get upside. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill-up cash back. Don't pay full price of the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your banking account, PayPal, or any gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. That's code TOUCHDOWN. We are back. Our final segment of this Tuesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you. We talked about weeks 7 and 8 in the first segment, weeks 9 and 10 in that second segment. Now we're here wrapping up the show with the final segment talking about weeks 11 and 12. Now, tell me if you had this on your bingo card. We're talking about bingo here a lot today, but tell me if you had this on your bingo card. These last two games we're going to talk about here in this final segment are the Ravens' last 2 wins of the season. Yeah. Think about that. Not wonderful. November 28th was the last time the Ravens won a game during the 2021 season. There were a lot more games played, so it's unfortunate. But let's talk about the good wins here while we have a chance to before the final installment of this. So we'll have to talk about 6 straight losses. The Ravens played the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field in week 11 in a game where Lamar Jackson misses it. The first time Jackson missed a game for injury or illness purposes. This time it was illness. He ended up just coming down with something. It was a non-COVID illness, but it was interesting because he didn't practice and he came back, and then the Ravens add him to the injury report and say he's questionable, and you're kind of thinking, oh, well, what's going on here? And Marlon Humphrey after the game kind of talks about how, he's Jackson is curled up on the plane, and he's kind of thinking, oh man, we might not have this guy out there. So who steps up? Tyler Huntley gets the call. Now, Huntley didn't really know what was going on until, right around game time, where the Ravens made the final call and said, look, Lamar Jackson just can't play. Tyler, let's go. It's your time. So Tyler Huntley gets the start for the Ravens, and he goes 26 of 36, 219 yards, 1 interception. Devonta Freeman leads the Ravens, not Lamar Jackson, 16 carries, 49 yards, and a score. Mark Andrews, 8 for 73. This game was another one of those games where you're just like, what's going to happen? You're not really sure what Huntley's going to give you. I thought Huntley in this game played relatively well. All things considered, spot start for him. Didn't really know when he was going to start. Comes in kind of cold and I think plays well. Hit some really nice throws and showed a lot of nice things. Now, Justin Tucker hit 2 second-quarter field goals to put the Ravens up 6-0 at halftime. The Bears get a big play on a screen. Tell me if you heard that before for the Ravens. In the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, Justin Tucker, a field goal, but then the controversy. Let's go back to, we talk about controversy here. Let's talk about this controversy where the Ravens, it's a 4th down play, and the Ravens decide to bring the house, leave Chris Westry on an island against Andy Dalton, Raven killer Andy Dalton, who has just obliterated the Ravens in the past in some situations during his Cincinnati days. And the Bears receiver, Marquise Goodwin, just puts a complete double move on Westry. There's no safety help over the top. Goodwin is wide open for a touchdown that puts the Bears up. They go up 13-9. The Ravens have to respond with a touchdown to win the football game, and they do that. Tyler Huntley leads this team down the field, a 5-play, 72-yard drive in 1 minute and 19 seconds to get Devonta Freeman a 3-yard touchdown run. Justin Tucker hits that extra point. Ravens win the game 16-13 in dramatic fashion. There's no reason the Ravens should have been in that situation in the first place. Again, the Bears were a team that has talent, but I thought the Ravens should have been the team to win. Not, maybe not handedly, but they should have won, I think, in more convincing fashion here. But a win is a win. Huntley comes in and plays well. They didn't have their star quarterback. They're missing all the guys to injuries. So credit to him. Credit to Tyler Huntley for coming back in that game and, being down with that little time to go and leading the Ravens to a comeback victory. That's impressive in my book. So I give him credit there. But, there's the controversy from Don Martindale. A lot of people grilled Don Martindale in the days after this game about putting Chris Westry on that island against Marquise Goodwin, not putting safety up over the top on a 4th down play. The Ravens were aggressive all season. We'll talk about it with the 2-point conversions in the next installment of this. But, yeah, just so much going on. And I think that for what the Ravens' identity was, it was on par. But was it the right call? I mean, it worked out in the end, kind of. There was a touchdown, but then the Ravens had the ball back. But I don't know. I personally would have put safety elbow over the top. I'm not saying don't blitz, but don't leave Westry on an island who is still relatively inexperienced at that point. In terms of team stats, the Bears went 2 of 11 on 3rd down. Great job by the Ravens defense throughout most of this game. The Ravens went 7 of 16, so this was a good 3rd down game for them. Penalty-wise, both teams had 6. The Ravens held the ball for 38 minutes and 50 seconds. The Bears 21-10. So the Ravens' time of possession battle, they won that one in a big way. So the Ravens picking up that win, and they now are they're in a pretty good place, and they now are entering a stretch of divisional games. Now, Kadri Ismail and I talked about this. Kadri talked about how the Ravens had to win these next 3 games because this was the Cleveland stretch where the Ravens had to play Cleveland twice in 3 weeks with Pittsburgh sandwiched in the middle. The Browns had Baltimore where they had pretty much a month of straight Ravens to prepare for the Ravens. I predicted the Ravens would win the game in week 12 and lose the game in week 14. I guess I'm a wizard because I predicted it right. But so this game in week 12, the Ravens win it 16-10. Again, we started off here with a Justin Tucker 52-yarder and then a Justin Tucker 25-yarder. Then Chase McLaughlin hits a field goal. So the Ravens 6-3 at the half. So they love those 6-3 starts. Mark Andrews, 3rd quarter touchdown from Lamar Jackson. Then David Njoku it wasn't a touchdown. It hit the ground, but okay. There was a touchdown to David Njoku. Then Justin Tucker hits a clutch field goal to put the Ravens up 6 instead of 3, and they win the game. Now, the Ravens defense is holding these teams to 10 points, 20 points in that margin, 13 points. The offense can't score. The offense is in a huge rut. They can't do anything. They can't sustain drives. There are penalty killers. There are penalties all around. There are just boneheaded plays and bad decisions. And the Ravens are managing to squeak out these games. And you're kind of thinking, if the offense keeps playing like this, hopefully the defense can keep it up. But scoring 16 points a game or 10 points or 20 points a game in the Lamar Jackson era was absolutely unheard of. The Ravens in 2019 were putting up 50 burgers on teams and 40 burgers. And we were sitting here talking about it was natural. We're another 40-point game. That's nothing new. But now the Ravens offense struggling to put up more than 20 points in a game. The defense is holding up. They're holding up right now. But in this game, Baker Mayfield went 18-37 for 247 and a touchdown through the air. Lamar Jackson went 20-32, 165 interceptions, 1 touchdown, and not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 interceptions. His worst game of the year by far, I would say. Just again, poor decisions. Some balls were tipped up in the air. Not all of them were his fault, but there were a few pretty bad decisions by Lamar Jackson in this game. And, for him to have 4 interceptions and the Ravens to still win the game, big shout out to the defense. That was huge. But here the Ravens are sitting at 8-3 because they're able to play good defense. In this game, they were actually able to finish. So credit to them there. The Browns 4-13 on 3rd down. The Ravens 7-15. Overall, the Ravens had those 4 turnovers. Cleveland had the 2. It was really a no team wanted to keep the football. It was, hey, you can have it. No, wait, you. No, you. No, you. So that was the theme of the entire game. But the Ravens held Nick Chubb to really a pedestrian game, a really bad game. The Browns as a team only had 40 rushing yards. And when they have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt on that team, that is extremely, extremely impressive. So the Ravens holding the Browns to 2.4 yards per carry is really great. The Ravens held the ball for 37 minutes and 4 seconds. The Browns 22-56. The Ravens now sit at 8-3. They win this game. They're at 8-3. They're the number one seed in the AFC through 12 weeks. Nobody thought that would be the case. The Ravens believed in themselves. They were there. They had it. They had it right there. They picked up some impressive wins by their defense. The offense had some come from behind wins earlier in the season, but I think we all know what happens next, and we'll talk about that next week in our final installment, talking about weeks 13 through 18 of the Ravens 2021 season. That's all I have for you here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be answering your mailbag questions, so stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.